What's going on, y'all? We are going to do a disassembly and reassembly of a Schlage A-series wafer lock. This is most often was the A51WD. It is a wafer lock that has not been made since about, I think, the 70s or so, probably mid-70s. And you're not going to run across them very often. Most of the time, it is advised to replace because they never made deadbolts with this type of key cylinder. So if you have a deadbolt on the door, most likely you already have a pin tumbler lock on there, and of course that cannot be keyed to that. So most of the time we advise people with these to go ahead and replace them instead of rekeying nowadays, because it's not nearly as commonplace as it was back for a while ago, and trade magazines have gone over rekeying this. I'm not actually going to rekey this in this video. I'm just going to disassemble and then reassemble it. We're going to go through the disassembly pretty quickly, because if you're familiar with the Schlage A-series lock, it is exactly the same, with the exception of there's no retainer, so you cannot turn the key and depress a retainer to pull the knob off. You do have to strip it down like you would a Schlage A-series, which I've done plenty of videos on. I will try to find one and link it up here in the corner. But in the meantime, we're going to go over just disassembly, reassembly, and if I get a chance in the future, I'm going to do a rekeying video. If you have not seen it, Night Owl, actually a few months ago, we were both working on one of these videos without each other knowing it, and he uploaded his, and I was like, oh, hey, I did that same thing. I never uploaded mine because he went over most of what I talked about. But I am probably a little bit in the future going to do a rekeying. But to rekey it, you do have to disassemble it. If you're familiar with the Schlage A-series, you kind of know what we're doing here. So, you know, hit me with that that like button if you don't mind, and then move along. But otherwise, for those of you interested in taking apart and putting back together a Schlage A51WD wafer lock, let's get started. So, of course, disassembly is going to always be a little bit. Let's take a peek at some of the stuff that I'm working on. Peek, quick peek, quick peek, quick peek. If you are taking this off the door, you pretty much, know what you're doing, hopefully. But it is just like an A-series. You depress the retainer on the inside knob, pull the knob off. At that point, if you look around, in line with the spring that you should see sticking out of the rosette, you should see a notch. And it may not be there, but that's where it's supposed to be. And this is kind of hard to do without it actually being mounted on a door, but when it's mounted on the door, you would take your screwdriver and slip it between the gap that will be just like that. And once you get it between that gap, you would just twist your screwdriver and the rosette pops off, which reveals the screws to unscrew it from the door. Once you get those screws out, you simply pull the lock off the door. Oh, my latch is sticky. I got a sticky latch, but you would just pull it straight off like that. So now at this point, it just becomes a Schlage A-series lock, and we're going to pull the key out of it. It will have 1 or 2 cotter pins, and these are very simple. You just push it in and yank it out. Set it aside. Doesn't matter if it has 1 or 2. Technically they're supposed to be 2, but a lot of them only have 1. You want to make sure you are in a clean area so that stuff, when it does not hit, does not disappear. Oh, there it is. Good to put a paper towel down so you can see the parts. At that point, this will be free to come off, but it only goes just a little bit. So you have to lift, turn just a bit, and then it will slip the rest of the way off. You will see, if you study it, you will see the springs right here. Those are engaged just in little nubs, and they go down into pockets. So I usually will set it down on the ground, and I'll usually wrap my hand around it, because once we pop this plate off, those springs are going to want to shoot out. So I take my hand and I cup it just kind of like that. And you can put your screwdriver in any of these notches. These tabs can bend back in if you bend them a little bit. That's no big deal. But you just want to put your screwdriver in and kind of angle it like this to get it to pop off while you've got your hand cupped over that. Okay, we got that plate popped off. Sorry, I'm making sure the camera angle is correct there. At that point, these springs are ready to fly out. So I'm going to push pressure on the latch here and then just lift it off. Now, if you were just rekeying this lock, I hold this together and I will just kind of set it down off to the side like that. It does not need to come apart any more than that. However, this is a full disassembly video, so I'm going to go ahead and drop the 2 springs and the 2 feet and the 2 cups in the foot. The latch retractor mechanism, which does have 2 distinct sides, the plate that held all that together, and I'm even going to pull the knob out all the way. Now at this point, it is the difference between that and a regular A series. This is a pin tumbler A series. Once you get to this point on one of these, when you lift this out, you see it's just the mechanism that the tailpiece of the cylinder goes in. Well, for the Wafer version, it's actually the whole plug is joined together. Most of the time you can just push and this will slip out. Sometimes you have to take your pick and kind of manipulate those wafers to get it to come out. But most of the time it comes out a lot easier than it goes back in. So we're going to grab it and just kind of ease it out. Again, if it hangs up, just kind of twist back and forth, rock it, and you should be able to walk it out. If not, take a pick, run it through, and push it the rest of the way. If you do this a lot, I have a cut down key that I use, and the head's cut down, but you don't really have to have that. So at that point, we can see the difference between, there's absolutely no difference here, but the rest of the plug is actually the cylinder. Now again, we're not going to go over rekeying all this, but I will show you how it works in case I don't do the other video. It's only one depth. It's basically the spacing and the tip cut, which coincides with these codes. There's a 20 and a 10 code series, and that tells you which 20's on this side, 10's cut on the other side, just for the tip. But we can see here we have one, 3 and 4. So this code is 1362. That doesn't make any sense until you pull it out and gauge it. But again, we're not going all over this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 14. We're going to go over that in the rekeying video. What those wafers do is they project up into the slits that you hopefully will be able to see. Not that one, but this one and this one. If you were holding it, it's 3 o'clock, 9 o'clock position. And those go up in those slits and keep the plug from turning. When you put the key in, they retract and you simply are able to turn it just like any other wafer lock, really, except the wafers are going up into, well, pretty much like any other wafer lock. Again, if you're just rekeying this, we would stop and just rekey it. However, we are going to go ahead and take this all the way apart for those who need to know. We're going to take our knob and turn it until it lines up, and then turn it again, and then turn it again, and just keep, basically just keep turning it until it's allowed to fall free. It will come out. Don't try to yank it out. If we look at this, we see a plate that slides in and out, and there is a cutout in this plate. We're going to unscrew the outside rosette. This is your adjustment rosette to adjust it for thick or thin doors, and then slip out that mechanism. So this is your housing. So we have an exploded A51WD lock. Now let's put it back together. And here we go, putting it back together. So first thing I do is go ahead and just get the core back in here. If you remember, this half moon surface rides in that. So drop it in there, and putting it back in, you do have to help it along. And I do that just by pushing the wafers in with the tip of my pick, or even the tip of a screwdriver or whatever. Just gently push them in as you're pushing it in this way. Don't forget your tip cut projects out the other side, so go grab him on the other side as well. Get in there. Oh, I can't. There we go. There we go. You never want to force it. A little bit hung up, and that's, oh, there it goes. So I just turned it a bit and it freed it to fall the rest of the way in. I was just about to come in and kind of manipulate the wafers. Once you get it in and it's flush, try the tip of your key to make sure the wafers are engaging in the slits, and then of course try the key fully. Now I'm going to set that down. I'm going to grab the chassis housing, make sure the cutout here aligns with the cutout here. I'm going to drop it in. It will not work if you do not align those two notches. 3 when you count that. And then slip this plate in. Again, make sure it lines up. You cannot slip it in that way. You can slip it in this way, but the notches will not line up and you will not be able to get this back together. So all 3 notches lined up. At this point, to not forget, I'm going to go ahead and screw on the outer rosette. Get our knob, and basically again you're just going to put this in and then start turning it until it is allowed to go all the way, and at that point turn it and you see the projection coming off the back of that will go opposite your notches, so, and it will also hold itself in. We're going to grab our button, slide this through. Again, that is the only way to do that. There's no other way to get that to go through, so we utilize that slit. Then there's a projection on the button. If your button on your lock doesn't hold in, that means that button's probably broken or it's messed up in this area. Pretty common, but I do not lock it. I just kind of put it in there like that. Grab our plate that pretty much holds everything together and put this in until it is again able to hold in. We see the notch there. That notch with that plate lines up with all those other notches, and the flat of this plate is going to go towards the latch. Now we're going to grab the latch retractor. This is the mechanism that actually pulls the latch back, and we see this is a little foot type mechanism with a projection sticking off one side. It has to go into the cutout of the bottom of this. It cannot go that way because it would not work. And once this is in that, these little, what I call cups, they sit just like that in there, and they basically hold the springs. So we're going to drop this down with the cutout in there, put each little cup in, make sure they seat, and then the open slit goes towards the bottom. So we're going to hook this in to that, put our plate back on, and then this curved mechanism is what intersects this part of the latch retractor. So, and then turn the plate around until you're open, your flat side is where the latch is. Otherwise, you cannot get the latch to engage. Now, I hold it. There's a couple of different ways to do this. You can assemble it and then put your springs in. It's going to go together like that. And, you know, for a long time I tried messing with it to push it down and like get the springs in and snap it in. That results in a lot of flying springs, way more so in my opinion than just trying to snap it all together at once, because it's just so satisfying when it all snaps together. So we're going to get it all lined up, make sure it's in here correctly, and I'm going to hold it horizontal so that the springs are sticking straight up in the air. I know the camera's above this, but I'm holding it horizontal where the springs are vertical, and I'm going to hold the other side horizontal and then just kind of angle them into each other. So I'm going to, looking at the springs here, engage them on their little divots, and then lift up, and use my thumb to push that all the way in. And I'm pushing here, I'm pushing that way as well to get it to engage. Now, you see me holding my finger over it. I'm doing that to keep those springs from, you know, going places. Going places. At this point, it is sitting kind of funny. So I'm just going to hold it in its position to see what that might be. Okay, there it goes. It just sat correctly. This really is the hardest part of putting an A series back together for most people, for me. And but once I have that latch properly positioned, I will snap it together. Okay, I'm gonna go over that one more time, just to show you. Okay, off, horizontal, vertical, into its notches. Lift up at a sharp angle, using my thumb to push that down in there, snapping the latch in, making sure the springs are good here, making sure that half moon shape is on the right side, and snap. If this is at an angle, it's not on correctly. Check our springs one more time, try the inner, try the outer, and we're good to go. That is it. This goes down, quarter turn, just like you took it off, and then push down. If this doesn't go on, you have your little things are bent right here, so you can just pretty easily take a pair of pliers and bend it back in. And when you're putting, last tip, when you're putting the cotter pin in on the latch side, you want to make sure the short edge of it goes out, because if you do the long edge, there is more of a chance when you bend it out of that getting in the way of the latch when you put it in there. If this long leg was sticking out right here, when you tried to put the latch in, it could really throw you for a loop. But it does not matter on this side. You can put it in either which way. Just make sure it's in and the little feet are spread just a bit. And at that point, you just put your top where it's top to the top, please, people, and snap your inner rosette on right where that spring is. It snaps in, and then we'll snap in to that. And slip your knob down and push the button, and you are good to go. After you try the key one more time. So, locked, unlocked, locked, store room function style, and unlocked. Key does turn both ways. These are not terribly difficult to bypass, but we're not going to go over that. Again, if you're interested in the rekeying portion of that, just let me know in the comments. I'll try to get around to it first of the year. But for right now, if you have any other questions or comments about taking one of these apart, feel free to leave them in the comment section. And thanks again for watching, guys. We'll catch y'all next video.